So thank you again, and thank you for everybody who's joining us live on the stream. Today's event is being streamed by VII Insider, a partnership with the VII Foundation, as well as PhotoWings. So thank you very much for providing the stream for us and for joining us. My name is Nao Mogopa. I'm an artist, a writer, and a speaker, and I identify as a born free. I was technically born in '93, so anyways. My job today is to facilitate this conversation. And the word facilitation comes from the French facile, and that means easy. So my job today is just to make it easy. That's all I'm trying to do and achieve today. On stage with me, I have the artist and the curators of today's exhibition, Nao Ntsoma, an award-winning photographer, educator, and creative consultant. Azu Nwagbogu, internationally acclaimed curator interested in decolonization, restitution, and reparations. As well as Ilvy Njiokiktjien, independent photographer and multimedia journalist. Can you give me a round of applause? So let's begin. Ilvy, could you tell us more about the show and what we can expect? I think so. There's a mic there as well.
Hello, everyone. Like this. Does that sound okay, or is it off? It's okay. I'm gonna do this from a piece of paper, if you don't mind, because I want to make sure that I explain well why I started this project and how it all came about. I'm really delighted, first of all, to be here, thanks to the Apartheid Museum and of course to VII Insider and for everyone that's watching from home. And I'm very happy that this event brings us all together. I'm a bit sad about the traffic situation. I have been getting a lot of messages from people who are running a bit late, but we'll see them come in. In the last 18 years, I've worked as a photojournalist and documentary maker for international media all around the world. And from those 18 years, I spent 17 years working on stories about the born frees. I used to live in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and that's when I started 17 years ago. This journey, oh, can we turn the lights off? Thank you. This journey became a book, 2 documentaries, publications around the world, and luckily also in South Africa, and a traveling exhibition, which now is presented right here. The stories started dialogues, and I really hope that today this panel discussion will create a dialogue too. We discussed to turn this light off. Should I, or are we good? You can see it, right? We're all good, okay. The born frees are now young adults for whom racial segregation on paper, but it's been mentioned before, is a thing of the past. But many of the effects of the structural segregation that were implemented during apartheid still persist today. There are 2 main reasons why I started photographing the born free generation. The first is that in 2007, I got the opportunity to do a photography internship at the Star newspaper right here in Johannesburg. That's actually where I met Neo. Every assignment I went on for the Star newspaper had young people at the forefront everywhere. At demonstrations, celebrations, at protests, the youth was always there. And this struck my attention, and I realized I wanted to start photographing them. The second reason I started focusing on the born frees is very personal, and before we start the panel, I would like to share this with you. I am actually of Chinese descent, which you won't be able to tell, I guess. Very tall as well. My grandfather was Chinese, born in Indonesia around the year 1900, during Dutch colonial rule. And racism was rife against the Chinese. They were seen as second-class citizens by the Dutch East India Company. They were always seen as the other. Assimilation was encouraged by the Dutch rulers, and my family felt blending in was crucial. They even changed their name to make it look less Chinese. They made it one word, even though Njiokiktjien was 3 separate names, Njiokiktjien, which makes it sound a lot more Chinese, I guess. My Chinese grandfather, here in the middle, at the age of 10, was sent to the Netherlands with his siblings, without their parents, on a boat for 3 months, to live with an unknown host family in an unknown country. He never saw his mother again. She died after 20 years and they never reconnected. They were, when they arrived in the Netherlands, one of the first immigrant families in their region, where they were again the other. My grandfather's mantra from that moment on was blending in, trying harder, not ever speaking about his past or his identity again. That's me and my granddad and grandma. The silence surrounding their experiences with racism and war echoes through the generations, leaving wounds that persist even in my 3rd generation experience. And I don't even understand how. This history, though complex, has left me puzzled about the lasting impact of intergenerational trauma. This backstory, this history, became one of the driving forces behind all my work, not just Born Free. It has always pulled me towards stories about belonging, racism, and equity, and identity, because it takes a while to understand where you came from if no one ever spoke about it. It also became the starting point of the Born Free stories. How do you photograph the transition from apartheid to a multiracial democracy seen through the eyes of the youth? I wanted to make sure to reflect all the different voices from different socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds throughout the country. Over the years, I researched the youth, their history, and the policies of the government intensively. It was the first project I did that actually became a collaboration between myself and the protagonist, because I asked them, in which ways have you been photographed already? What are the stereotypes? And how can I try to steer away from that? And they were my biggest advisors. The Born Frees allowed me in on this very intimate, on very intimate, funny moments, on important steps in their lives, but also on other things like the unfairness of not being able to find a job. Many of the Born Frees are here now. So please, in the end, we'll get you all up on stage, but I'm very happy you're all here. I'm very honored. One of them actually flew in, so it's really amazing to see you all here. And in the end, we'll make sure also when the others are arriving to be here on stage together. 2 of them, Nina and Zinhle, will perform their beautiful music for you after the panel. I really want to thank the Apartheid Museum, Emilia Potenza, and everyone involved here for hosting this exhibition, the Dutch Embassy and Canon for making it all possible, and of course also the Nelson Mandela Foundation, where it will move to next. And of course to Neo and Azu, who really worked hard on curating this show. But above all, I want to thank the Born Frees, because over the course of nearly 2 decades, you guys let me in and get so super close with my camera. It would not have been possible without that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ilvy, for that. I think that some of the themes that you're exploring are really important themes that many of us can relate to, especially this question in South Africa of intergenerational trauma. And then I know for myself as well, you know, we all have that. Now, As a curator, what were some of your intentions going into the project?
Thank you for that question. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to support my friend here, Ilvy, who I've known since 2007. We worked together at the Star. Having studied and also being close to Ilvy, it made me realize that she was really passionate about my country and I really wanted to support her. How I came about now like executing the project was to be very fair in my selection of the images and also to look at what needs to be highlighted and celebrated. We were presented with an archive, that was built over a period of 17 years. And to find the key images to present to this exhibition was not an easy process. We've had sleepless nights. We've had, we had meetings at like 2 o'clock in the morning at some point, just trying to make sense of the collection. But it was easy, and it was an enormous responsibility on my part as a practicing photographer, as a curator, as well as a South African, because the focus is going to be on me. How well can you tell your own story, through Elvis' lens? So when I first looked at the work, the first thing that came to mind was, what is it that we are celebrating as a nation? What has been the milestones? Let's forget about the negative things that happen. We have experienced challenges, a lot of challenges that I have to be very fair in even, like sharing that. So I listed themes that speak to the journey in the 30 years. And one of those themes was unity. Unity comes, was like very key to build a nation. Nelson Mandela wanted us to unite as a country. And it's through that unity that it has actually influenced others that are not in South Africa to draw something from it. So the listing of the themes was really encouraged by Nelson Mandela, is like his aspirations. This is the generation that he really, really wanted to see change through, and the generation that he didn't wish them to have any reference of apartheid. Everything was done so meticulously by the team. I wasn't just the only one that was in that process. Ilvy was key into that because she's the one who had an intimate relationship with the protagonist. I wasn't in a position to speak on their behalf, as I am not a born free. However, my experiences growing up in South Africa has shaped how I look at things, because the born frees, I've had the privilege to witness their birth. I've had the privilege to witness their growth. How they responded to change. It's more of a personal, of my personal opinion. It could not be their opinion, because hence I say, like, this story is bigger than us that are sitting here, excluding my colleague here. He's born free. I cannot be an advocate for his troubles, his challenges, but I can also be a part of the growth, the development, the support that he requires from my generation. International, like the intergenerational dialogue, it's key in these processes. Hence, we are here now, and I would have loved to see more of that generation here. I don't see a lot of them, but this is their story, and I really want them to, I would wish for them to lead the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this word in, archive. I think it's a powerful word. And I think it really kind of speaks to the kinds of memory work that, especially the foundation is doing with Rizia. But moreover, also for honoring, I think there's a way that we've come to understand human beings as being capable of archive themselves. And in this work, there's a powerful way that you're honoring human archives as well. And I think that's really special. Coming to you, Azu, why is this show important?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. The conversation that we've had leading up to this exhibition really dealt with a lot of ethical issues that are important in telling stories, right? And the curator and as someone who is interested in images, you talk about the word archive. The archive is something I feel that is alive, right? That is organic and living. And there's the historical archive that we have to navigate, and there's the living archive that we make. And Ilvy over the last 2 decades, nearly 2 decades, has produced this living archive. And for me, it was important to think about what the utopia that we're all aspiring to looks like, right? And if we're trying to create a better world, what does that vision future look like? When you have an artist who's worked for about 20 years, developing, patiently telling a very important story. And very significantly, it's not a personal story, it's a collaborative, it's not a voyeuristic story, it's not the problem that we, in my work as a curator, have always fought against, this sort of external piloting gaze that exoticizes the other. This is a really powerful collaboration between a storyteller and not even the subjects, but the collaborators who are part of this narrative. So I think it's important for me. It was important for me as well because, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that, Nyada put me to mentor her as a curator in a curatorial journey. And so this just all came full circle in a way. So this idea of me supporting this project from this sort of more broader historical perspective became quite necessary and quite easy to do.
Thank you. I think Thank you. Thank you. I think that you also brought in an interesting word, utopia. And what's interesting about that for me has often been there's an argument that says that the word utopia could be spelled with an E at the front, which really points it to being the place that does not exist, you know? And it kind of really speaks to the South African Constitution, where Justice Pius Langa once said that the South African Constitution is a bridge towards. It's an ongoing bridge towards, in a similar way, a utopia. And I think that's a powerful reflection, and thank you. Coming back to you, Ilvy, so in your work, working with people who were born free over these years, what has been your reflection about young people or born frees and their relationship to Nelson Mandela?
I actually think I actually think that throughout the years, I've seen it change a bit. I would say when I started photographing in 2007, I think the young people that I was photographing were really looking up to Mandela in a way that he was almost, well, he's an icon, and that's also the way they viewed him. I would say ever since maybe right before COVID, I saw a change in the discussion when I interviewed them. So for the documentary that you guys saw when we just started, one of the questions I asked everyone is, what do you think about Nelson Mandela? And their questions were this was filmed mostly in 2018, and their answers were mostly similar to each other. He's an icon, he had a great hope for the youth, and he's a father figure, things like that. And recently I did stories around the last elections, and I asked everyone the same question, and I saw it change. I saw that there were young people that were saying Mandela was a sellout, and I would of course question, like, why do you think so? And not everyone is saying that, but I did see people changing the narrative, and I would say the younger the people are, the more I hear that narrative. But this was also in the time of the elections, so it was a bit more tense. Maybe if I would ask again now, it would be a different answer again. So I've seen it fluctuate throughout the years.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I have a note for you that if you press the button, apparently it should work now. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Hello?
Oh, so nice.
I think that's interesting. When I think about 2007, I was in grade 7. So I'm trying to think back now what my views of Nelson Mandela were, and I think they'll be consistent. I think at 7, I didn't necessarily have, I think I very much accepted what was given to me by Nelson Mandela. I didn't necessarily have my own relationship with him, Yeah, thank you for that. Coming back to you now, can we, and I'm hoping you'll jump in here, Zoo, but can we explore some of the ethical considerations involved in producing this show? Here we have a Dutch woman telling the story of South African-born frees. How do we make sense of that?
As a Dutch woman, I wouldn't even say, Ilvy has lived in South Africa. I mean, for somebody who with an in-depth understanding of South Africa, for me, it was no-brainer for me to be involved in this project, right? Because I wasn't expecting anything but fairness in her approach to the work. So that question is actually very important because this is it's very topical. It has been debated in very serious platforms, including this one. I hope that it will spark that debate about who's supposed to tell whose story, you know. And the story, we live in a very global society, and it's for my country in, you know, like in particular, we needed somebody else's perspective about us to draw from, you know, like somebody who will come here and pinpoint our, you know, like maybe issues that they can never be repeated, what we need to change, how we need to improve through the pictures. She cannot be an advocate for our stories. However, how she responds to our society will be very key on how we can move forward as a nation. You know, so I think what we can do is just to encourage others to participate in this journey. This journey is very complex. It's one of like a lot of contradictions. It's very complex, cannot be handled by just one society. So having Ilvy here showing us in pictures how we have traveled this journey, I think it's something to draw from. It's something to help us introspect how we can actually improve what needs to be improved, embrace what we have achieved.
Sure. I think there are a number of very important ethical, maybe even moral considerations. First thing is, you know, when you make work that is compelling and it's convincing, as we see in the exhibition, it takes passion. It takes, it's not an assignment. We haven't done this work over 17 years on assignment from, I don't know what, New York Times or something. But this is really a story that is, driven by a deep personal history that I think Ilvy has hinted to in her own family background. And I think those deep convictions are reflected in the way the story is told. And the story of the Born Free that you see in the exhibition is so deeply resonant within those who feel ordered. And I think the fact of the collaborative approach with this, you know, story that isn't voyeuristic, that is made, given a voice, if you like, to the collaborators is a very big part of the story. I think, you know, to deny the photographer is also to deny the voice of its subjects, of the collaborators who made the story with it. And I think that's a very big thing. And I think, you know, we have to be very wary of this sort of liberal fascism or leftist fascism, where if we do not sort of bring logic and intellect into it, we're going to have a situation where we're going to say, well, we need farmers to photograph farmers and teachers to photograph teachers, because it's not going to make sense anymore. Or then we need to do genetic testing to understand who has the right to tell stories. And it's not funny at all, because I find that it's one of the problems that we have, where we've stopped trusting our own instincts and our own intellect. You know, we allow others to think for us. And this sort of, you know, yes, no, that is decisions that are made by people like a policeman, if you like, who are not looking, is a problem. You know, art, visual culture is the sole reserve of the individual, and you are better off by exposing yourself, seeing shows, seeing exhibitions, reading about art history, and then you grow your consciousness, you grow your knowledge about it. And so if someone sits on a chair saying yes, no, based on limited facts without actually looking, that's abysmal and it's a disgrace. So I think, you know, when intellectuals abdicate responsibility, and we stop looking, and we stop thinking, we stop engaging with, the work, and it's a real problem. I think then you give that gap, and that gap is going to be, absorbed by the more dangerous forces, and it's a very big thing to be aware of.
No, thank you for that. It makes me think about watching soccer and like a soccer pitch, and how people in the stands are always shouting, "Yeah, well, no, you're stupid, do that," you know what I mean? And how when you're on the pitch itself, you have a very specific perspective. And there are things that are important that you can see, but those are things that you can't see that are important as well. And I think that someone in the stands then also participates meaningfully then, you know what I mean, in kind of creating the game.
That's a great analogy.
I want to come back to you, Ilvy, and ask you about your own reflections on Nelson Mandela.
This is a test. Is it working? Yeah? So, actually, in 2007, when I worked for the Star, before actually starting to work at the Star, I had studied in then called Grahamstown, now Makanda, in 2004, which was exactly 10 years after him becoming a president. And to me, he's a total icon. Growing up in the Netherlands, when he walked out of prison, when he became president, I was exactly 10 years old. So you can all do the math. I'm turning 40 in a couple of weeks. Anyways, long story short, I remember that. And I was only 10 years old, and I remember those videos. And from that moment on, he was an icon to me. I read the book, I saw a lot of the movies. And then over the course of the years, actually in 2007, I had to photograph him for the Star. And it was a press conference. And I got the shittiest images anyone will ever take, because I was basically just waving, like, hi, and then I nearly forgot to take images. I have one, it's in the show, but the rest was all blurry. But what I noticed in the years that came after, up to the last elections, is that what I realized is that for the young people, in all his beautiful speeches, of course, a lot of pressure was put on them. When I interviewed the Born Frees throughout the years, that was the one thing that was also coming back. It was a very positive view of him, but also they said things like, well, we have the feeling we have to make things work, even though around us things are not working. So I think the pressure he put on, as a positive person as he is, was a lot for some Born Frees, I think, yeah.
Thank you. I think that very much matches in my own reflections on Mandela, I think, and the relationship with young people, right? I think, like you're saying, so Nelson Mandela gets positioned as a savior, and young people don't feel saved. Like the documentary was showing, there's problems in the job market and education, there's crises in gender-based violence and so many other areas. And so there's like a discord, you know what I mean, in trying to accept Nelson Mandela for everything that he did while still living the life that you need to live, you know? I want to ask you a similar question now. When young people rubbish Nelson Mandela, how do you respond?
As, I've had stories of people like just, if you may allow me to use this word, rubbishing the legacy that Nelson Mandela fought so hard to leave us. It's disheartening because they don't have the experience that I've had, you know. So I think my generation, they respond differently to Nelson Mandela's legacy because we have been very privileged to have lived in apartheid and to have experienced the democratic South Africa. So we can tell there's a clear distinction between the two. There were points where we could not even go and present our works in overseas countries, you know, because just simply for being a South African and being Black, there were a lot of restrictions, and the democratic dispensation, which we credit our icon, Nelson Mandela, for, it has opened up spaces for us. Maybe if you haven't really longed for something, you wouldn't really fully understand and appreciate it. My generation, can attest to how it was then, because we lived through those processes, that era. So our understanding and the respect that we have for Tata Mandela, it comes from experiences, you know, and the changes that we have witnessed in front of us and we have been a part of. So it really breaks my heart. If you want my honest answer, it really breaks my heart
I hear
for
you.
them not to say that.
Can I add something to that? During the interviews, especially the video ones, in the video I interviewed 25 born frees for about an hour and a half each. And I wasn't talking a whole lot. I was asking questions, and then when they were answering, I was just nodding, because otherwise you hear my voice on the audio, right? So, but there were many times where I thought exactly this, like, do you still know? The younger people were, the more I realized some of them didn't really know or could not feel the way it was before. And I would also ask them, can you describe what you think your parents lived through? And a lot of them couldn't. And then I would ask them, which is a difficult question when you ask someone, why do you not know more about it? Because it's difficult to answer, why do you not know something, right? But I drew the conclusion, but as a journalist, I don't like to draw conclusions. I really had the feeling, after speaking to so many born frees, that the school system also maybe at certain ages didn't talk a whole lot yet about what apartheid was like. And then Lwando, who was seen in the video, who said he went to study at Stellenbosch and that he was so afraid to see all these white people, he explained to me that his parents also didn't like to talk about apartheid times because it was such a big trauma. Kind of like my grandfather never even explaining we're Chinese, you know, like not talking about what the past was like. So it's, in my opinion, quite sad that they don't always know the background. Just want to add that.
I think that sentence, if you haven't longed for something, that really landed for me, you know, when you haven't longed for something. Can I come back to you, Azu? So overseas, the title of the work centered Nelson Mandela. I think it was Mandela's Generation of Hope. So I guess my question is about Mandela's reception overseas, but I want to kind of really make it a bit sharper by saying, so how is Mandela as a social and a political resource understood overseas?
Oh, that's, you know, growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, and we had a very strong consciousness about the situation in South Africa. Nigeria would receive students from South Africa. Every Nigerian musician had a free Mandela song. It was, you had to have one, you know. If not, we were, you know, it was something of national pride, if you like. Everyone took it very personally, the situation in Southern Africa at the time. And so, yeah, I feel much like everyone in my generation if I hear any sort of slight disrespect to the genius of creating this end and this transition. You know, what a lot of people do not understand, and young people need to understand, is that the journey and the process is ongoing, you know? And if you use the analogy of the Old Testament, the Bible, you have Moses never went into Canaan, right? He led them to the shores and someone else did the next journey. And so Mandela has done his part, you know? And then the next journey needs to be carried on by the next generation, the people that were around him, that learned from him. And obviously there'll be a lot of, you know, stumbles along the way, but that's part of the democratic process, learning and unlearning and shaping and carving and sculpting and evolving this, you know, this journey. But we have to be careful again of creating demagogues. You know, the cult of personality is such a problem with when you create a cult of personality, it's very difficult to find a way to think outside of that cult of personality. And Mandela was great in the sense that he never wanted a cult of personality. He was very open with his own failings as a human being. He wasn't a saint. No one walking around the earth is a saint. And so we should remember all of these things. Everyone will work out their own salvation. We all have to walk through this journey in kindness and fairness to build a more egalitarian, more fair society. Every time you have an opportunity to pull someone up, you should embrace it.
Thank you as well. I think you resolved something in my mind I was struggling through in this conversation about Mandela, and and I think that notion of a cult of personality, I think, is a big one. You know what I mean? And of course, Nelson Mandela fought valiantly against becoming this cult personality in that way, in many different kinds of quotes. I remember there's this one story. I'm sure you guys know of the statue outside of Union Buildings. There's a massive statue. I don't know how tall it is even. I think it's 721, somewhere there, I don't know, meters. But when that was being proposed, Nelson Mandela resisted in many ways of having that statue being built in his honor. I think there was, I think that Vern has told me that story at least. But also, yeah, and I think that it's made critique of Nelson Mandela almost impossible, And it kind of pushes that critique then into more extreme, more outrageous, more flabbergasted kind of positions in a way, to try and say anything other than what has already been said in a way. And also thank you for bringing in this notion of ongoingness. I think that's an important point. I think one of the ways that Nelson Mandela gets criticized is because of the TRC, because the failures of the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee that happened shortly after apartheid. And what's clear about that is also that it was never intended to end where it ended. It was supposed to be an ongoing process, let alone the reparations that were recommended by that body as well, and that didn't happen either. And so Nelson Mandela becomes then the face of that failure and many other things in society, which is fascinating. We're drawing towards a close, but I want to invite you to start thinking about some questions. I'm going to open the floor to questions from the audience. If you're online as well, please also prepare some questions. Emilia is going to send me those questions on WhatsApp from the chat. And so I'll be on my phone. I'm not checking Instagram. But maybe in closing, Ilvy, what do you hope people leave this work with?
I hope with a hopeful view, with a view that it is an ongoing process. I really love that. Actually, it was Wilmarie, one of the Born Frees, who said it in the video as well. We're on our way. I don't know exactly the wording you used, but I've seen the video so many times, I don't remember now, sorry. But yeah, it's an ongoing process, and I really hope that my images reflect that. I tried to really make a balance between uplifting stories and also some really sad stories. But I hope overall you can see it's a young democracy on the way to being one of hopefully the best countries in the world. In my opinion, it already is, but there's a lot of struggle, but I hope that the hope part is what you see in the show, and that's what people will take home.
Thank you. Now, same question. What do you hope people take away from this work?
I think I share the same sentiments with Ilvy. Even before we had deeper discussions around the work. Does it work? It does sound better. Even before we had deeper, discussions around the work, it was clear that hope was driving the narrative. And hence I started by saying that all I had to do as a curator was just to be fair to the generation and fair to Ilvy and share and be fair to my people. And also just to look at what needs to be highlighted and what needs to be downplayed. And there was really nothing that needed to be downplayed. The only thing that we needed to encourage was the hope that we're still holding on to. We were raised to have hope. We do not, like where we are now, it was never achieved in one day. A lot of people perished in the process. People were murdered in the process. People were incarcerated in the process. But their families, they had hope. That's the only thing that kept us together. And I hope that with the body of work that is on display, it carries that. It helps us to still believe that a lot can still be achieved and the generation can find peace within themselves and start interrogating themselves even to see how they can contribute to the society to going forward.
Thank you. Azu?
Well, what to add? I think they've said it all, but I'd just like to also echo that the beauty of the exhibition is that it's in conversation with the permanent collection, right? And so in a sense, it is my hope that people who come to see the exhibition feel a sense of agency, a sense that you can contribute to history by the little acts that we do every day. You know, when you have images, it's an artifact of our time. It's a little time capsule that gives us a clue as to how we lived through, say, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And so that feeling when you walk through a room, I always like that feeling of getting the sense that we're part of something bigger. So yeah, I hope, in addition to hope, I hope that people feel a sense of agency, that you can contribute to shaping and making a better country and a better world. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think it brought me back to this article written by Kodwo Eshun, where he describes archaeologists from the future coming, I think, in the next century, archaeologists from the future coming back to our era, well, you know, looking at our time, and they're going through the discs and the internet and, you know, our diaries and Facebook posts and otherwise, and trying to discern what is this moment, what imperatives were chasing them, what was their hope and otherwise, and it was deeply fascinating. But now we're coming to the Q&A. And so if you'd like to ask a question, I'm encouraging you, please do, and do raise your hand. I think it might be best if we take questions 3 at a time. We do also have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So I might have to pull us back a little bit. So we have our first question here, and maybe you can kick us off.
Thank you. I'm fascinated by this question of hope in opposition to, I think, what we all feel is this rise of cynicism and polarization in the world. And I also bringing into the fact that a lot of that is blamed on not just social media, but also traditional media and journalists fighting in this sort of clickbait society to make things bigger and more shocking and more and spread fear in order to sell papers, in order to keep their jobs, which is a very noble goal. But do you grapple with that, and how do you balance all of those questions within your work here? So I guess the question is really, where do you see the role of journalists, photojournalists, and artists within this space, you know, as part of the problem and as part of the remedy?
That is such a great question. We're going to extend the panel by 2 hours. This is a whole conversation on its own. I must say, to be honest, so I've been in the photojournalism industry for 18 years. And I would say in the first 15 out of those 18, I was always defending the media because I love my job. I truly believe that when I work, I try to be honest. I try to picture what I see. But I'm also now definitely seeing the other side, where it's become so important for newspapers and for media around the world to have people clicking on the stories. And even though the stories sometimes, or mostly, will be a balanced view, or they will try to be as balanced as possible, then the headline is going to be so bad. You click on it and you think, what? So I'm in a stage now where I'm quite disappointed. I know the story was about hope, but so the question was about hope. I just, personally, as a photojournalist, I try to really also focus on stories that are solutions driven. I think that is also definitely a theme and a way of storytelling that's growing. A lot of people, I'm sure many of you are tired and sick of only seeing the negative news being spotlighted, even though there is so much else going on as well in the world. So I guess that's my answer. And I've lost the balance a bit into, I'm trying to see again where I fit in. I work for all, or not all, but a lot of major international media. And sometimes I get assignments and I feel discouraged. I'm like, oh, really? You want to focus on all this sad stuff? So I try to find my way into, I don't know if it answers your questions, but I'm searching, let's put it that way. I'm also searching as a photojournalist to find my way in this, yeah.
If you can allow me to just add on to that, am I audible?
Yeah.
Everything starts with an intention, in my opinion. And I think, as we all know, that photography can be both objective and subjective. It all depends on who's behind the camera in my practice as a photojournalist, how you respond, what is that you're trying to highlight. And when you now getting back to your question about hope, how do we maintain hope? We can never create hope if it's not there. Yes. Hope, it can be superficial. It depends who's behind the camera. Are you searching for hope, or you are trying to recreate it? Are you documenting what is presented to you in all fairness, or are you trying to go against it? So really, it boils down to who's behind the camera and what their intentions are. And when I say intentions, it means even the platforms that work gets to be shared. The person who controls the narrative, it always sits with the editor. Those are the people that decide what is it that will sell the paper, or what is it that will contribute to change, that will motivate people to start doing things differently, approaching lives differently. So hope, really, it depends who's behind the camera. It can be both, either way.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Yes.
There's one over there.
Okay.
If there's any others, please put your hand up. So there's one at the back. So it'll be 1, 2, and 3.
Hello. Hello to everybody that's in the building. So my name is Innocent Moreku. I was part of the documentary there. I think you guys saw me, I was in red hair. Yeah. It's a switch up now. Look at me now. So yeah, I met Ilvy in 2018, right? I was still young, still energetic, had the business mentality, confident, everything was there, right? Because I had believed that 9 to 5 pay your bills, but your dreams make you rich. And as I grew older and I started to speak more to Ilvy, I started becoming a public speaker, a trauma-informed coach, and it's been an amazing journey. However, as a young person in South Africa, we've been going through the most. There's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of trials and tribulations, right? And especially I can see a lot of young people in the building as well. So the documentary on its own, I definitely understand that a lot of us don't understand the ideology that Mandela had, right? But sometimes when a society is broken, it is very important not to rebel, but to heal humanity so that we can move forward. And I think that's the concept which Nelson Mandela wanted to bring into the space and into the scenery. Irregardless if you're white, black, or any type of race that you come from, humility doesn't have a color. So meeting Ilvy has been so amazing, and I had to talk, Ilvy, because you know. But I'll ask you a very subjective question, because as civil people, we always try to help everybody else. And sometimes we forget to help ourselves. So I'll ask you this question, is that through the process of the documentary and us shooting it, what have you personally learned, especially going to different environments, the rich, the poor? What have you learned personally about yourself, and how has this documentary changed you as a person?
Thank you, Innocent.
Yeah, that's a very...
Before your answer,
Thanks so much, Innocent. That's beautiful.
just before your answer,
Oh, sorry.
I'd love to take the last 2 questions and then we can have answers, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. So we take the question and then...
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we can do a nice wrap. I think the next person was at the back there, but we can go there first, it's fine.
Hi everyone. My name is Sipo Luis. I was one of the people who were documented. So I wanted to add something on what Elvis said. She said something about Mandela selling us as a country. You know, a lot of young people, they believe that Mandela sold us as a country. I was also one of the people who believed that, yeah, Mandela sold us as a country, you know, and my perspective changed when LV came and documented us. I saw a lot of things Mandela, you know, tried to do for us as a country. You know, like his mission and vision for South Africa, for us to unite, you know, regardless of your skin, regardless of how you look, regardless of your flaws. I wanted to understand, why would LV move from Netherlands to South Africa and to document us about us being free, you know, and it's something that came to me that a lot of young people are lost on what Mandela did. You know, a lot of people who are saying Mandela sold us as a country, they don't get to research what Mandela wanted to do for us and what he did actually. Yeah, I just wanted to add on top of that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And then our final question over there, please.
Hi, my name is Tabelo. I'm a journalist, so I'll try and be positive with my question. Firstly, I would like to ask about that image on the screen, and like as a cover. For me, like it says a lot of things, especially where we are in the country and the conversations that we're having. And I just want to find out from you, like the intention of making that particular image. What was the decision or what was the thought process behind it? And secondly, are they still together? I'm sorry, just.
Thank you.
I'm a journalist.
Can I add one thing? Tabella's being very modest, but she helped me like so much on the last story I worked on in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. She was with me the whole time, day and night, and she did an amazing job. Just want to say that. Thank you. Oh, my memory is not so good.
Oh.
Oh, we were depending on my memory, okay. Let me think. I'll start from Tabella's question. Actually, the book that I made has this as a cover on it, one of the covers, because I couldn't pick. I regret it now a little bit, the decision. There are 4 different covers that all together, I feel, tell the story of South Africa. The only reason I regret it is that most people want this cover, so I now ran out and I have a few other books left. That's one reason, and it's also been interesting because I received a lot of questions about why would you make a book with 4 different covers? And it was mainly because I felt the storytelling had to be so equal that I really couldn't pick. This image came about after a night of basically dancing and partying with Wilmarie and Sakiti. Wilmarie is right here. She's hiding a bit, but she is here. And I remember walking back to their car, and they had not seen each other for quite some time, I remember, and they just started kissing. And as a photographer, I'm always on the back, in the background. So I took the image, and then I thought, oh wow, this is really a beautiful image. And I felt it was the one image from the show that was hopeful to me. If you think of what Mandela's ideas were throughout the 90s. So I felt this image was really an image that sparked the story or the feeling that I wanted to convey about hopefulness and about a country moving forward, I would say. About your last question, can I share? They broke up. They were together for many years, and they broke up, which I am. I want to say I'm pretty sure it's not about. It's not a cultural thing, but they broke up. And when people ask me internationally, I always tell them they're still together. But I can't now because she's right here with us. But it's less hopeful when I tell them that they broke up. Okay. And now I have to backtrack my mind.
So the other question, part of it at least was...
Sue, do you want to add something? Ah, okay. What I learned on the job. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, my memory. I loved what you said, Innocent. What I learned on the job mainly is that there are so many stories to tell in this country. It's never ending. And people are so welcoming. I've had the question many times, oh, does everyone just let you into their homes, into their bedrooms, into their lives, into their cars, into their... Yes, they do all the time. It's amazing. So many of you opened up. That made me emotional when I just said it. It does now again, because how amazing is it that you were all like, yeah, come see what I do, even if it's not something happy, and that really amazed me. So what I learned personally is to also be more open. I actually learned so much in 17 years of opening up more to the people around me even. So I think personally, this project gave me so much growth, and it's really because of all of you. Thank you.
I think that part of that final question was, what brought you to South Africa?
What brought me here was at first an exchange program where I studied in Makanda. And after that, that was 2004, I kept going back. And I think it's these kind of opportunities, the fact that there was an organization that made it possible for me to go and study at Rhodes University here, and then later on to do an internship at the Star. It was just the opportunity that was made by the university I studied in the Netherlands, and it was an exchange. So it went, it went on for a couple of years, and many of the people that actually were on that exchange several are still in South Africa and worked here for a long time, or they go back and forth. So, and I just kept coming back, I guess. Yeah.
So that's so that's today's conversation.
Can I just speak to
Okay, very short.
I thought Ilvy will mention that she actually lived in Soweto at the time. She couldn't afford accommodation in town, so she had to ask a friend who also worked with us, Pabalo, I hope he's here.
He's right there.
Yes.
I lived with him and his family in Soweto.
Hence her deeper, when I said deeper understanding of a society, that's what I'm referring to. She wasn't just coming here to tap in and leave.
Thanks, Pabalo and family. Thank you.
I think that was important. Thank you.
Thanks, Neo.
No, thank you as well. Thank you to everybody who has been with us through this conversation in person and online. I hope I've done my job to make this conversation easy.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our MC.
Thank you. Thank you, Kneo. Thank you, Azu. Thank you, Neo. Thank you, Ilvy. Thank you very much. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. And thank you all for your patience and your questions and how sensitive you've been as we've been preview to this conversation. Thank you very much.